As a couple who got married at 19 and 22, we've heard a lot of interesting things from people on the internet regarding our marriage at such a young age. And we've literally heard it all from, oh, she was probably pregnant before they got married, or they're going to be divorced in 3 years, just give it time. We've literally heard everything. So today we're coming on here to address these assumptions about getting married young and give you guys the truth of what it actually is like to get married young, which is our story.
Yeah, I feel like we've heard a lot, and I feel like there's like a bad stereotype around like people getting married young. And like, I think, there's a couple different things. If you're at the age like you are, if you're not mature enough to get married, I think that's one thing. There's a bunch of different, I guess, conversations and arguments that could be, made about being married young and all that type of thing. But, that's for each individual couple to kind of discuss and go through on their own. And it's definitely not for other people to kind of intertwine themselves in.
Right.
I think too, it's really important, like something that Julia and I did before we even got married is like we sat down and talked to our parents about it. Like we sat down, we talked to our parents about it. First and foremost, we talked to one another about it and said, can we make this work? Is it time for us to get married and that type of thing? And we really, encourage one another to pray about it. Okay, are we in the season of like, is it time to get married? And all those different things, questions that couples ask themselves when it looks like it's kind of leaning towards the time to get married. And so we're going to be addressing all the assumptions and telling the truth about being married young.
Yeah, and again, we just want to preface, like, just because we got married young, that doesn't make it right for everyone.
Yeah.
But we did want to address these assumptions because I feel like no matter who it is, people feel the need to say these things and say, oh, well, if you got married young, this is the only reason that you would. Like, there's no way that it'll work out. And so, again, we're not endorsing young marriage for everyone. We are just sharing our story, and we want to inspire you and encourage you to not listen to everything that you hear on the internet.
But most importantly, listen to God.
Amen to that.
That's the main thing is like, listen to God and where He's calling you in different series of life. Like, it's not our job to write our own story, right? It's His job to write our story, and we just have to kind of be obedient to that. And so we're just going to share what that looks like. We have both written down some comments we've received, questions we've been asked, people's assumptions about getting married young in general. And then we're just going to kind of address them and kind of give you the truth in terms of our marriage, being married young, and maybe help some of you guys who might be younger wanting to get married, or maybe it is just genuinely you're at an older season in life and you do want to get married. Wherever you're at in life and you're thinking about getting married or you are married, we're going to be kind of just working through some questions and assumptions and things that we've gotten, and hopefully not only to share our story, but then to encourage you guys as you guys either plan on getting married or navigating your relationship as well. So.
And I'll go ahead and start us off because I think this is the one I see most commonly especially in our circle. We have friends who get married all the time, right? And being at a young age. The one that I see the most is, oh, well, they're a young Christian couple who waited for marriage. Like, they're just getting married quick to have sex. That's like probably the very top one that people say. And like, surprisingly, that is not what marriage is about. Like, what in the world? And you would think that people would like not care about what other people do with their lives, but like, no, that is maybe the reason some people get married, but that was not the reality for us.
Yeah.
Like, we really wanted to get married, and when you're in a relationship, hopefully you know that the physical side of things is honestly not the most important by any standard. And the Bible actually, talks about resisting temptation and not prolonging that waiting period, if you will. And so definitely don't rush into anything. But there is an aspect of marriage being something that is honoring to God, and then the physical side comes along with marriage, and that is also honoring to God. But that is not a reason to get married by any means, and that is not our reason for getting married young. And so many people wait for marriage, and I feel like today's world, it's not super common, but it used to be really common, and there's reasons for it, which we've discussed in past videos, so we don't really need to get into that. But no, that is not why we got married so young.
Yeah, no, not at all. We actually, I feel like we dated and even knew each other for a long time before we got married compared to most couples. I mean, we knew each other for like 3.5 years, but we dated for 2 years before we got married. And so in all reality of things, like 2 years is not terribly long, but it's also enough time to get to know somebody, to get to know their intentions in dating you, if they're, wanting to date you for marriage, and then kind of stepping into that. Another, I guess, something that we wanted to address is like, oh yeah, you guys got married young, but how are you guys going to do it? And I think it all goes into just like, number one, understanding your life circumstances and where you're at and not making rash decisions just because you want to get married. And then number two, if God's calling you into a season of marriage, knowing He'll provide, right? And so I think that's one of the things that we looked at where it's like, okay, if we are feeling like we're called to get married, let's look at the practical side. Like, are we going to be able to support one another? You know, are we going to be able to wake up every single day and be able to put food on our table and that type of thing? And by the grace of God, like, yes, we are able to do that. And so, you know, that was one of the main things we looked at. And then also looking at, okay, so what does it look like if we have a kid? Like, obviously we don't plan on having a kid for a while, but what if we did have a child? Is that something, you know, we can take care of? And like, yes, if we had a child, we would make the adjustments and things that we need to do in life to take care of that child ultimately, which is one of the biggest gifts from God. Even though that might be tough for us, we have all only lived once. We're all going to be constantly learning in life. Like, nobody knows everything. And so that's what I think the beautiful thing is like, let's say we had a kid in a year. Yeah, that might be tough. It might be hard. And, you know, we might be young parents, but then we also get to be the young grandparents. We get to be the cool parents that run around and play, you know, play with our kids, you know, those types of things. So yeah, I guess that's one of the things that I would touch on is like, it's all a learning process wherever you're at in life. And if you guys have come to the place where, you know, your parents believe you're very mature, you surround yourself with like-minded believers and people who can pour into your life and give you like insight on like, you know what, yes, you're very mature. I think this is something you're ready for, or no, you're not. And like gathering that and really praying on all of that, that is something that helped us come to the discussion and decision to get married. So. Yeah.
But I'd say at the same time, like, because people always say like, well, how do you afford a wedding? Like, how can you afford this and that? And we are obviously very blessed. My parents helped us with our wedding and things like that. But it just comes down to like where God is calling you in that season, because if you aren't financially ready and God hasn't called you into marriage, then yeah, you need to get financially ready and prepared. So we're not saying like, oh, if you have money, that's qualifying you to get married.
But I mean, there's also a lot of things too, like your wedding doesn't have to be super extravagant.
Oh, no.
Like I feel like our wedding wasn't really extravagant. We had it in your home church building, and most of the stuff we had at it was, you know, homemade. Like we didn't spend, and we also spent money on the wedding too, you know, that her parents didn't cover all of it. But yeah, there's ways to do it. Like you don't have to have some glamorous wedding like you might see on your Pinterest board, or even though that might be something you like, but if you're really called into marriage during that season, that's not something necessarily you might need, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
And again, I feel like I have to keep repeating this because I don't want anyone to take this video out of context. Like, we are not encouraging you to get married. Like, we are sharing our story, but if God is calling you to get married, then get married. But if he's not, do not get married. You know, it's that simple.
You guys all have your own walks and your own relationships, and these are discussions you guys are going to have with your significant other, and ultimately seek God at the middle of it. We're just trying to give advice based on what we've experienced and then also share our story.
I'd say the next assumption that I see all the time is people love to say, oh, well, they're going to get divorced in 5 years. But when you look back in time and you look back at like the older generation, they were married for like 50, 60 years. And I'm like, why is that? What changed? And I feel like we as a culture do not view marriage as the same thing that it was back then. And divorce is something as easy as signing a paper to break up a marriage. And it's like, no, God did not create marriage to be a negotiable thing. Like, it is a covenant between the two people and God. And divorce is something that for us is not an option. When you say till death do us part, that is in your vows for a reason. And so I think something that will really help you and is going to help us is like, just because a fight comes up, just because we have a difference of opinion, just because something hard happens, that doesn't make it okay to just go and get divorced, you know? And of course there are sometimes grounds for divorce. Like, we're not anti-divorce in every situation. But I do think our generation has done a bad job of really understanding the commitment that marriage is. Because if you're not ready to make that commitment, you shouldn't be getting married.
Yeah. I would say this. So if your relationship is founded on the Lord and like your relationship truly has Jesus at the center, I believe that is something that's going to prolong your marriage for a very long time, because you're living hopefully by his word, and through these things you'll understand kind of what the grounds are for divorce and what they're not. And so for the people who have been divorced, like, again, I want to preface this, like, sometimes divorce, like, it is the best option. In some cases the Bible does touch briefly kind of on the concept of divorce, and so there are some circumstances where it's like okay to be divorced, and we don't want to push the stigma that it's not. But like, we see a ton of comments like, have fun getting divorced, you guys are married, you guys will never be able to do this, and it's almost like preying on our downfall. And I'm just like, you can look at all these things and either be discouraged or look at all these things and hopefully learn from other people's experiences and use those things to help fuel our marriage so it's long lasting. And what we, again, as Christians believe that is, it's having a foundation on the Lord and working together as a team. Like us, we're a unit, we're a team, and we made, again, the promise till death do us part when we got married. And so truly understanding what that means going into marriage is one of the things that we really look at. And obviously, I pray that we never get divorced, and I don't think we ever will because of the foundation our marriage is built on. But these are all things we looked at really, really carefully and prayed a lot about before even getting married. Because, you know, my family, like, directly, I have family who was affected by divorce. Like, my parents got divorced. Praise God, they got remarried. But, like, even extended family got divorced. And so I've dealt a lot with that concept. And it is hard. It's really hard for children. It's hard for the family. And I never want to have or be in a place where my kids have to go through that, or maybe just the community around me have to go through that. And so, yeah,
and we're not looking down on anyone who has been divorced in the past. And most of the time, like if you're watching this and you've been divorced, we love you and we're not looking down on you. It's the people who say, oh, well, you know what, I'm divorced, so therefore you're gonna get divorced because it didn't work out for me, it can't work out for anyone.
And honestly, I think sometimes it's out of good intention because they're kind of like, oh, be careful. But, you know, at the same time, it's like we know where our foundation is. And this is, again, our story, and we're just sharing our experience and the things that we get and the assumptions about us. And we just want to kind of clear some of those things up. So just one last time, so we're super clear, we are not looking down on anybody who has been divorced, because there are situations where divorce is acceptable and it's the best choice to go through. And we just want to share kind of the stigma that's been thrown at us and the comments that have been thrown at us, and kind of how we see it from our view as Christians and what we've founded our marriage on and our relationship on, and then also kind of what we've prayed through and what we've made our decisions through and how we've thought about things. So just wanted to clear that up one last time. I would say the next assumption that we got, this wasn't a super popular one, but some people said, oh, they're probably pregnant, they might be having a baby.
That's what everyone says now. Oh, she's probably pregnant.
Yeah. And I guess not a lot of people say that, but we've had that assumption. We kind of touched on this last video. No, we're not pregnant, we're not having a baby.
We weren't pregnant.
No, we weren't pregnant. We waited till marriage. And so just to kind of clear the air on that, that is not why we got married. And we are not having a baby, although we're excited for the day that we do get pregnant and have a baby. We think that's probably going to be down the road a little while. So yeah, that's what I would say there for that assumption.
And for our next assumption that I feel like gets thrown around just a lot is that you don't possibly know what you want at a young age. Like I'm 19, for those of you who don't know that, which like...
You're almost 20.
I know, I'm almost 20, but people say, you know, your brain's not fully developed till you're 26, and you're gonna be a completely different person when you're older, and so how do you know that what you want now is gonna be what you want in the future? And to that, I say, well, I know what I want now, I know where God has called me now, and Jacob and I now get to go into the future together. We grow with each other every single day. I mean, we're both so different from when we were, even when we started dating. But we've gotten to grow together, and it's been so beautiful. And so it's even more exciting. Like, I get to grow old with him. I'm so excited about that. I don't want to be alone or be with anyone else. Like, I want to grow up with him. And so that's what I say to that. You know, I know what I want now, and it's not really even about what I want. God has made it so evidently clear to us that we needed to get married, that we should get married, that we're the right one for each other. And so in obeying God, it was important that we were to get married. And and that's just something that's so special and unique, and nobody can take that away from you, you know? So don't let anyone say that they think that there's a certain age of maturity, because there's really not. You can be 35 and not ready to get married. You can be 19 and not ready to get married. It isn't about age. It really is not, when you are fully listening to God. And obviously there's like legal ages and stuff like that.
I was gonna say there's legal ages, but, there's practical ages, especially with like where you guys are at. I mean, some of you guys might be on a university campus until you're 23. Obviously we made the decision to go online school, but you know, it might not make sense to get married until you're out of college. It's different for everybody. And that's the thing. This is our story, right? This is how God has written our story. These are the things we've gone through and prayed through, but your story might look completely different. And so it's through being prayerful through all of your situations and circumstances and really seeking God, you know, hey, I'm young, you know, I'm 20, I have this serious relationship. Is it time for me to get married? You know, the answer might be no, and that's okay. And then in that case, if both you and your significant other really want to marry one another, you take that time to wait and continue to prepare for marriage. And so that's different for every couple. And yes, obviously there's legal ages and everything, and we don't want you guys to get the wrong idea. You know, it's not probably very smart to get married at 16. You might still be in high school and it's illegal.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's different for every single person's situation. So I would say the last assumption or the last truth about us getting married young. A lot of people would say, hey, don't you want to go out? Don't you want to live your life first? Don't you want to do all the things you want to do? And honestly, yes, but I want to do that with Julia. You know, and like, that's the decision I made. Like, yes, I'm young, but I've made the decision too of how I want to live my life. And that's living my life set apart following the Lord. Mm-hmm. That's how I've decided to live my life, through experiences, through just life in general. I mean, He's the only thing that's ultimately fulfilled me. Like, Jesus Christ is the only thing that has ultimately fulfilled me, and I want to follow Him all the days of my life. So yes, there's a lot of things that I want to do in my life, that I have a desire to do in my life, and now I get to do them with Julia. Like, I am so excited to be able to bring her everywhere that I want to go and do the things that I want to do, and I'm also excited to experience the things that make her happy, and the things that she desires to do. And so in response to that, like, yes, there are things that I would love to do, but these are things that I can totally do with Julia. Like, they're not things that I just want to do on my own, go out and live life on my own, you know? Like, they're all things that I want to include Julia in because I love her and she's my wife. And those are things even too during the dating season, like, I would have wanted to do with Julia just because it makes it that much more sweeter, and you get to make memories with one another, and you grow up, and hopefully if we have kids, we'll tell our kids these stories and all of those types of things. And so in response to, don't you want to live life when you're young? You know, yeah, I do. But for me and Julia, our story looks like living life together. It looks like making memories together and getting to do all the things that we've desired to do together. And that's what makes being married to one another so sweet. Anyways, these are just some assumptions that we have gotten about being married young, and just some truths too about being married young from our story that we wanted to share with you guys. Whether you are getting married young or you're not, and you just wanted some insight on this topic, we've been learning a lot, and we're going to continue to learn a lot. As I said earlier, we've all only lived once, and so we're all learning life as we go, and everybody's story looks different, but this is what our story looks like as a relationship and a marriage centered on the Lord and on Jesus. And we just wanted to give some insight into our life being married young, so that you guys can take this information and not only learn from it and grow from it, but also just kind of be filled with the information and kind of think about different things, maybe if you're gonna get married young or if you're not, and kind of take these things and pray about them as you choose to go about your relationships and get married as well, in hopes that it'll help you navigate when you want to get married, who you want to get married to, and kind of what the priorities are in your brain. So
definitely. And guys, we'll be praying for all of you guys always, and we love you guys so much. That's why we want to share these things. And as we've said, like, God has such an incredible story for you, and so we're sharing our experience in hopes to inspire you and encourage you. But yeah, we love you guys so much, and we really appreciate you guys supporting us and watching our videos. And we look forward to seeing you guys again next week.
Comment anything down below that you might have had a question on, or something that you really like. But we love you guys. I hope this video helped you guys, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
See you guys.